How you doing? Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and gonna do a review right now of the new AlunaGeorge album, Body Music. These guys are a London pop duo who have been dropping some pretty hot singles for the past few years. In 2011, it was the song You Know You Like It, and in 2012, Your Drums, Your Love. And this year, earlier this year, my personal favorite so far in the line of singles that they've been dropping, the track Attracting Flies. And all of these tracks were a pretty nice fusion of contemporary R&B, dance pop, electropop, some of the hotter electronic music styles to come out of the UK right now, like Future Garage as well as UK bass. And even though these songs, they were great, however, not really the most inventive pop songs on the planet, there was still reason to believe that this album would be solid. For one, George Reed is a pretty talented and versatile producer, plus you've got this guy making the beats, the instrumentals for the album track for track for track, so there is going to be some kind of quality control and consistency across the instrumentals. And as far as Aluna Francis goes, she's an incredibly capable singer, with a distinctly high-pitched voice, which is very tiny but subtly rough. Like, it's got a little bit of sandpapery quality to it. It's like I'm listening to her whisper, but even when she's singing loudly. And the songs on this album have a sense of structure, they have melody, they have explosive, memorable choruses. However, I would stop short of saying that it's really a ambitious album. Really, to me, this album is just kind of a mixed bag of contemporary pop tracks, even if a lot of them are well written. A lot of the same love and relationship tropes that you've heard in pop music a million times before are sung here again, but AlunaGeorge can come off pretty clever about it sometimes, like on the track Attracting Flies, where you have this emotional argument going on with a lot of lies being thrown around, and what is being sung is that this person, everything they exhale is attracting flies, kind of a polite way of saying that, it's bullshit. And I really like the hook lyrics on the track Lost and Found too. If you wanted a Lost and Found, you should have caught me on the rebound. There are moments like this where AlunaGeorge can present a pretty interesting turn of phrase, and that it really seems like they're putting effort into the lyrics, but then again, there are spots that come off a little obvious with the rhyme scheme, like on the opener, which tosses together the rhyme sad, glad, bad, the times we had. Okay, so the cat had a bat and it was fat on a mat. Even though I wish there was a little more effort put into the rhyming here and there, overall I wouldn't really say the lyrics are an issue for me. Even though many of the tracks here focus on this very young love or heartbreak, it feels like it's being executed with a pretty mature focus. Because at the end of the day, it's the genuinely catchy melodies and choruses that make these songs so good. Now, the previously released singles, which are all great, are dumped pretty early on in the track list on this LP, although I will say that I have to mention the track Your Drums, Your Love. I love the melody on this track, especially right before the chorus pops in and you get these jazzier piano chords playing into the song. It's musical flourishes like this that give some of these songs character and make them feel a little bit more layered than your average pop tune. And AlunaGeorge, outside of these singles, which they've been writing for years, they do manage to bring at least some other highlights, like the track Kaleidoscope Love. I love the vocal melodies on the verses on this track, has a really old school 90s R&B flavor, but the beat, and this happens on track after track after track, that brings this more 90s R&B vibe. The beat feels very new, feels very current, especially with the weirdly manipulated bass on this track. I would say the same thing goes for the track Best Be Believin'. Best be believin', best be believin'. Again, we're getting kind of an R&B flavor, but the vocal samples, which are pitch shifted and played throughout the song like an instrument, I mean, that just feels so new and really catchy. I like that Aluna Francis is bringing tons of things with her vocals, whether it be a vocal melody or whether it be her lyrics, that makes these songs memorable, but George Reed as well. Some of the tight little flashy additional melodies that he'll throw into tracks make the songs memorable as well. Now, like I mentioned earlier, other genres do come through on this LP, like the electropop and the dance pop and the UK bass, especially on a song like Lost and Found. I do like the variety, but part of me ends up favoring tracks like the title track on here, which are slower, a little more sensual, over songs like Superstar, which I just see as kind of being very blandish pop. There are actually a handful of songs toward the second half of this album that don't really add much to the LP for me. That includes Superstar as well as Lost and Found, Just a Touch as well. Part of that has to do with I don't really feel like George Reed is bringing an incredibly new idea or concept to these tracks that he didn't bring on previous tracks, in my opinion. But these songs are also kind of run into an issue for me that I think is the biggest consistent issue on this album, and that's really Aluna Francis. And again, I said earlier, she's a capable singer. I still believe that. And I think she has a lot of pitch. I think she has more range than a lot of girls that are trying to sing this kind of music. She definitely has an ear-catching voice as well, which makes the singles off of this LP so great, but I feel like she's a little limited in the style that she sings with. George Reed is much more of a versatile producer than Aluna is a singer. A lot of the tracks on this LP have the same vocal phrasing, and if it's not that, it's pretty much every song here singing with that same kind of cute, sexy dynamic. Even on the slower and more sensual songs where I actually would like to hear something a bit more soulful or toned down. I actually think the title track is one of the few moments here where Aluna felt legitimately vulnerable or kind of lovely. Even though I did like this album, it does feel a little limited on the diversity side. They do kind of tend to run a little one-dimensional on this album, but the songs that are good on this here are great. If only they could kind of veer out of their comfort zone and write some other songs that feel just as good as some of the singles and other highlights on this album, AlunaGeorge's next LP will be fantastic. And at this point, I don't really have any huge doubts as to whether or not that could happen, given the singing and producing abilities that have been presented so far. I'm feeling a strong 6 to a light 7 on this album. If you've given it a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What should I review next? And that's it. This review has been my opinion. If you don't like it, here's a straw. I want to give a shout out to a video that I made for the Maker Studios channel where I talk about 3 new music videos from Earl Janelle Monáe as well as Cloud Control. Find a link to that here or down there. Only the strong subscribe. All mistakes were intentional. Anthony Fantano, AlunaGeorge, forever.